Hey, it's Tuesday. I hope you guys are doing well today. It's about 1 o'clock. Yeah. Um, I think I'm going to start calling this Talkabout Tuesday. Um, I guess it's a reference from the movie Crocodile Dundee when he says he's going to go walkabout. Uh, Sometimes I feel like these videos are me on a journey rambling. As I ramble through, it's just me on this journey, um, going off in a direction unknown sometimes. Although I feel like today maybe is a little bit more known. I just want to um, just keep making sure it's recording. I want to make sure that I express how much I love you all and how difficult I understand and know that this circumstance and all the turmoil that we see in our nation is for you and for a lot of people. I know there's a lot of not understanding, misunderstanding, won't understanding that's happening. I'm not here to try to convince you or change your minds at all. I love black people. I love Mexican people. I love Guatemalan people as we've served there a few different years for our missions trips. I love people. It doesn't matter what your race or skin color is. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. I just love people. And so I struggle with what's going on because it's nothing that I would ever think. It's nothing that I would ever be a part of. It's nothing that I would never treat anyone the way that we've seen people be treated. And yet I feel like sometimes maybe it's not enough for me to just not behave that way, you know? So I'm going to do my best to learn. I'm going to do my best to grow. I'm going to do my best to support and love and come alongside and help in the best way I possibly can. I don't know. My heart's been really heavy for more than a week now. Pretty heavy this weekend for sure. Last few days, probably more than just even this weekend. But this message isn't, it's not just a me struggling message. There's hope in all of this. There's hope in our unity. There's hope in our coming together, our love and supporting each other. Our commonality has always been and will always be Jesus, his love for us, how he has created us to be, that we all have been created in his image, that black or white or tan or whatever skin colors there are out there, there are many. None of it matters. We're all created in his image. We as white people have definitely, I wouldn't say me specifically, but the history of the race wars and racism, we haven't done a good job of extending that belief that God has created all in his image. And we've somehow put an image above another. And so just, I don't know, tender your words, I guess. Just tender your thoughts. Try to understand, to hear, not just with your ears, and not just to hear from your perspective. Sometimes we have to go outside of our own perspective in order to understand. And so I just ask that we would be willing and open to listen and to learn. Now, I know a lot of the violence and the things that are happening, it's not good. The looting and the destroying of things isn't good. I don't even know which side is, I don't even know who's doing it. I wish there were no sides. I almost said I don't even know which side is doing it. There shouldn't be sides for one, but we're so polarized in our world today. If it's not this side doing it, it's that side doing it. Like, Jesus stood in the middle and drew everyone to him. A lot of people didn't like his thoughts. A lot of people didn't like his words. And really because they challenge us to the core of who we are, and that's our inside, right? Our own heart, our own beliefs, our own thoughts. Jesus challenged the sin that lives within us. And when you attack something that lives within you, that you are maybe unwilling to let go of, or maybe you just don't even know exists, or it just kind of lives quietly like a parasite, you don't even know it's there. When Jesus puts his finger on it, when he looks at that thing, you feel its pulse, you know it's alive. And it leads, I think, in one way or another, it leads to the pursuit of what Christ wants to do with that, and in the end, our surrender, right? Or it leads to resistance. I've lived both ways. I lived the way of surrender and also lived the way of resistance, where I didn't want to let go of that sin and that thing that was in my life that I thought I could take care of and control because it was my choice. I could do what I want with my own thinking. I know what I wanted. This is what I wanted. And so it's taken me a long time of a lot of pain and a lot of learning and a lot of surrender and being willing to get to this point of I guess just continued surrender. I just keep talking about that feels like it's been years now. But I'm listening to this book, After You Believe, by N.T. Wright, and I mentioned it a few weeks ago in a message. And I was running yesterday morning. I listen to it while I'm running. It helps my brain shift focus from what I'm doing running. So I'm working my brain and mind health as much as my heart and spirit's health. N.T. Wright's a great writer. Anyway, this book, After You Believe, I heard this section and it just really, I had to go back, and I have the book also on my iPad to read. And so I went back and found that place that was really hitting, and it just felt like it was really speaking to the climate of our day today. But it's not even really the climate of our day. It's the climate of our culture. It's the climate of our world. It's the climate of our brokenness. It's the climate of our lives apart from Christ. It's the climate of self versus, not even selfless, but self versus God, created versus the creator versus the creation. And anyway, I'm going to read some of this and then I'll be done. Hopefully it's not too long and you hang in there with me. I know there are a lot of opinions out there. I'm certainly not I'm not right, the most right. I'm just expressing how I'm feeling and trying to do so in a biblical framework. So I'm by no means an authority on anything I'm saying. But I'm willing to learn and listen. I'm willing to change however the Lord requires me to change. And so I guess as your pastor, if you're a part of this church, as your brother, as your friend, I'm coming to you with just, I guess, arms open and just asking to consider. Love God, love others. I just wish there was more of both in our world these days. This is what N.T. Wright writes. This is about Paul, and I believe this is in, I think it's Galatians. Let's see. 1 Corinthians 13. Just a little bit of reference there. think this is Galatians. Forgive me, I know I'm on the video here. I need to check real quick so I don't misquote. Galatians 5:19 to 21. Life by the Spirit. Yeah, Galatians 5. So if you're interested in going back and getting some more context with what N.T. Wright is writing about here, Galatians 5. Anyway, he writes this. Paul launches into the list of those behaviors he associates with, quote, the flesh. Referencing Galatians 5:19 to 21. He disapproves because what happens, this is a huge statement, okay? Paul disapproves of these behaviors because they're what happens when humankind turns in on itself and away from God. And then this is what Paul writes in Galatians 5:19 to 21. Now the works of the flesh are obvious. They are such things as fornication, uncleanness, licentiousness, idolatry, sorcery, hostilities, strife, jealousy, bursts of rage, selfish ambition, factiousness, divisions, moods of envy, drunkenness, wild partying, and similar things. I told you before, and I tell you again, people who do such things will not inherit God's kingdom. And then he goes on to write this. Notice that last line. The kingdom is coming, on earth as in heaven, and these are the roads which do not lead in that direction. They are the ways in which people on earth keep the life of heaven at bay, and so make a covenant with death, declaring by their behavior that they want to keep earth just the way it is in its present corrupt and decaying form. As with virtue, so with vice. The point is not that these styles of behavior are prohibited by some arbitrary legalistic divinity determined to stop humans, quote, being themselves or, quote, having a good time, end quote. These are things which exhibit the signs of dehumanization, of what corrupt version of humankind which, left to itself, is keeping God's promised future at bay. What's more, as he continues, as Shakespeare saw only too well, they are customs of the heart, habits, which will solidify and prove next to impossible to shift. That's the point of the word vice. Once the habits settle down, they will have you in a grip which you won't be able to loosen. He contrasts all of this with the fruits of the Spirit that I believe continue in Galatians 5. Forgive me, again, I have to go back. I should have just stayed there. Oh, boy. I don't know what version I just read that. I was reading it straight out of the book, whatever version, translation he used. He goes on with the fruit of the Spirit, and he contrasts what, N.T. Wright in his writing contrasts what he's saying about this, about all this behavior, right? About it being dehumanization, a corrupt version of humankind, this list of works of the flesh, okay? And then goes on to contrast those with the fruits of the Spirit. But I think it's important that he goes on to say this, and I want to read this in a minute. The fruits of the Spirit don't come naturally, right? Paul goes from saying in verses 19 to 21 what the acts of the sinful nature are. In the NIV version, it says the acts of the sinful nature are, and he lists them. And then in verse 22, he shifts immediately and says, but the fruit of the Spirit is, and lists the fruit of the Spirit, right? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And then goes on to say that there is no law there's no law against those things, right? Why would there be? But N.T. Wright makes a statement here that I again think is just too good to not mention, and I want to read it, and then I'll be done. You've already gone 15 minutes. The key is this, he writes: the fruit of the Spirit does not grow automatically. The 9 varieties of fruit do not suddenly appear just because someone has believed in Jesus. has prayed for God's Spirit and has sat back and waited for, quote, fruit to arrive. Oh, there may well be strong and sudden initial signs that fruit is on the way. Many new Christians, particularly when a sudden conversion has meant a dramatic turning away from a lifestyle full of the works of the flesh, report their own astonishment at the desire that springs up within them to love, to forgive, to be gentle, to be pure. Where, they ask, has all this come from? It didn't used to be like this. That is a wonderful thing and a sure sign of the Spirit's working. But this doesn't mean it's all downhill from there. And if you've been a Christian for any length of time, you understand that, right? These are the blossoms. To get the fruit, you have to learn to be a gardener. You have to discover how to tend and prune, how to irrigate the field, how to keep birds and squirrels away. You have to watch for blight and mold, cut away ivy and other parasites that suck the life out of the tree, and make sure the young trunk can stand firm in strong winds. Only then will the fruit appear. And in case anyone should think I'm imposing an alien note on Paul's cheerful list of these wonderful characteristics, surely thinks the easygoing romantic Christian, all these things will just happen by themselves now that the Spirit is within me. We note the final characteristic in the list: self-control. Now hear this. This is what he writes. I think this is so amazingly important. If the fruit, quote, were automatic, if coming to Christ changed everything automatically, why would self-control be needed? Right? He writes, answer, it isn't. So it is. It isn't. So it is. It isn't automatic. So it is needed. All the varieties of fruit Paul mentions here are comparatively easy to counterfeit, especially in young, healthy, happy people. Love, joy, patience, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, all are, N.T. Wright is writing, all are easy to counterfeit, especially in young, healthy, happy people, except for self-control, he writes. If that isn't there, it's always worth asking whether the appearance of the other sorts of fruit is just that, an appearance, rather than a real sign of the Spirit's work. That, we may guess, is why Paul immediately adds the note of crucifixion in verse 24. Those who belong to the Messiah Jesus crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Just because you live in the Spirit doesn't make following the Spirit's direction automatic. You have to choose to do it, and you can. And I'll end with that. We have to be people of self-control. We have to tender our words. We have to tender our thoughts. We have to tender our fingers. Let the Spirit of God flow through you in all areas. I don't remember the reference, the space, but Jesus or one of the disciples, said basically that they will know us by our love. But if love can be counterfeited, how will they know if it's from Christ and Christ's love or just our own definition or reflection of love? We have to understand the love of Christ. And as we employ these fruits, as the Lord and the Spirit works in us, self-control is kind of the hinge. It's the thing that makes the most. I'm messing up words here. Self-control really gives evidence of where the other fruits of the Spirit come from, right? I mean, that's what NT is saying, basically, that you can counterfeit the others, but you cannot counterfeit self-control. And so definitely be a good cheer, but mourn and pray and lament the state of our nation, and be a voice of change, and be a voice of love and support and direction, and lead other people. Our governor has ended our stay-at-home order, which is awesome, except it's really unclear how to move forward in that. As a church, we're working to put and formulate a plan that to start meeting in person again. And so, we've sent some emails, some discussion has begun. It's my hope that we'll be hopefully looking at, middle end of this month as getting together in person again. Although obviously practicing some social distance until we know for a fact that COVID-19 and the virus isn't going to be a threat. I've talked to too many people who have been in the midst of this and read about people who have had this or watched videos of people. It's still too serious a thing to just pretend like it's not a thing. And so it's a beautiful sunny day today that can have a really positive impact on how we feel, but the physical feeling that we're feeling can ebb and flow. It really can. Our center, our foundation must come from a life lived in Christ. And then everything we do should be found in that foundation, should come from that relationship in Christ and from the difference that he's making in our lives. This message doesn't feel very inspiring. It doesn't feel very exciting. But I just, our relationship with Christ is the thing in our lives that we need most. But living from that relationship with Christ is the thing that our world needs most. And so pursue Christ and then live Christ. It's so important. I love you guys, and I'll see you on Friday.